Can the artist's way really take me from burnt out author to bold creative in just 12 weeks? Join me week by week as I navigate my way out of the creative void. Hi everyone, welcome to week 3 of me doing the artist's way. And in this week 3, we are actually recovering a sense of power. In this chapter, Julia tells us that we are going to start getting really different bouts of energy and different bouts of emotions like joy and anger and power and things like that. And she goes through what anger is and how should we deal with it from a place of accepting that anger as opposed to trying to reject it. You know, in many of our cultures, and especially like if you're a woman, generally we're not really allowed to be angry because we have to be agreeable and things like that. So in this chapter, Julia talks so much about how we can use anger to kind of point the way and not the finger, to say, oh, okay, so I'm feeling angry because I'm maybe betraying myself and I want to go here, but everything is taking me here. This is why I'm angry, because I'm frustrated. What she clearly and rightfully says is anger is meant to be acted upon. It's not meant to be acted out. Anger is a very loyal friend that we need to listen to. The other thing that she talks about is synchronicity. And she mentions how sometimes we get really scared when we get our prayers answered. And sometimes we like to call it a coincidence or synchronicity, things like that, because we don't really want to accept that there is like this God out there or this source or the universe out there that is actually listening to us. Sometimes if we have this prayer answered, it means that we actually have to get off our bum and actually do something about it, right? It says here, anyone honest will tell you that possibility is far more frightening than impossibility, that freedom is far more terrifying than prison. And she says a lot of times we discount the answered prayer as luck or as coincidence. Now here she really believes that we are receiving an answer, and sometimes that when we actually go and follow our true soul and our passion, then those doors start to open, and that we go through it, I guess, with that, I'm not sure if I would call it faith, but like confidence that if I am led to a door and I open the door, that there's going to be a second door that I'm going to open, even if I don't know when or where. And very much so, she says to worry about the what, like the what is it that we want to do, not so much about the how. And it says that once we start our creative recovery, we're going to start finding that synchronicity everywhere. I have to say that as someone who grew up being a bit of a skeptic and not like really believing a lot in this, I had never really experienced it because I didn't believe that I could get that. You know, you would hear so many people that would say, oh, I want I was thinking that I want to get a pizza, and then my friend called me to invite me to go for pizza. Like, I think I didn't really get those experiences, but I think probably from, I don't know, like a year ago when I started being a little bit more spiritual, I find myself noting that I do get those synchronicities. And it could be like the things that you'll be like, Erica, these are like silly things, but like, I don't know, like this morning I just really wanted my coffee refill, and then the waiter came, but it's just like literally as I thought it, she came, right? You could call it a coincidence because she was just doing her job, and she was doing her job very well, but I'm gonna call it synchronicity. Julie says here that in her experience, the universe actually falls in line when we have really worthy plans. She's very rarely had a plan with that is like so good and so amazing for her, and that things haven't really lined up for her. And I feel like sometimes you do something and you realize like, oh my god, how could I have done this? Like for me, like moving to Australia is one of those, like, things just happened. I'm not gonna say flawlessly because it was, you know, I had some difficulties like finding that first new job, the Australian experience as they call it, but it was overall something that did line up, if that makes sense. In the book, she also talks about shame, and she mentions that making a piece of art, it's like holding a mirror into society. It's like revealing a family secret. And sometimes when a piece of art is really highly criticized, it means that because it's holding that mirror, basically people are shooting the messenger instead of saying, oh yeah, we should think about that, right? Like we should really be thinking about this subject that this artist is talking about, instead of and saying, oh, this artist, how dare she actually create this art. And this is where shame comes. A lot of us who grew up, for example, with like phrases like, what will the others think, what will they think, who is even they, right? It could be your family, it could be your neighbors, it could be your friends from school. So every time when we're asking ourselves this question, that question is actually driven out of shame. She mentions here that art actually heals a lot of the societal wounds, but before the wound can be healed, it needs to be open, it needs to be aired and seen and know, right? Like if this wound is always like hidden, nobody's gonna know it's there, and therefore it's never gonna heal. This reminded me of like when I moved to Australia, like a month before, I was bitten by a spider and I had to be 9 days in hospital. And I think I even had to change my flight for a week later than I originally had estimated. And I kid you not, I'm like, oh my God, this is a time I shouldn't go. It's terrible. Like, why? Like, maybe God is punishing me, like that I shouldn't like abandon my family and things like that. But then I was able to come, but I had an open wound for like 30 days. And it wasn't until I went to the doctor here, they said, no, 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 you actually have to leave it in the open and leave it to get fresh air so it can actually heal. Because I was putting all this, like, not honey, but like I was putting this ointment and then I was bandaging it. And then it's like, well, it's never gonna like close. We need that to close straight away, right? Because if you had this wound open, it could infect it and then it could give you all sorts of problems. I do have a big scar, but then it started healing. So I think this is the same thing that Julia is talking about. She mentioned also like there are so many artists that sometimes they start with a piece of art and just as soon as they are about to finish, they stop because it's like, well, I don't really like it anymore, or I don't really care for it anymore. It's not that important. And when we have this behavior, that is also shame that is trying to stop you from actually completing this piece of art. I think I've definitely done it, like when I am finishing a book and it's just like literally about to finish. First of all, I'm already tired of it. I'm sick of the story. Like I don't want to see it anymore. I just want it out. Some authors call it like finishing energy. So it's like you have to really bring that finishing energy so that you can actually finish the piece and not leave it like sitting there. So if you have something that you started and you worked and you don't want to finish it, maybe it's shame trying to drag you out of it, so you don't actually have to finish it and put it into the world. Julia also mentions that we need to be very aware when that criticism is coming from a place of shame and is coming from a place of like proper constructive feedback. Not all criticism like should be like shaming. A lot of the times when we are criticized in our work, it's because the person telling you is going to give you something that is going to be actually useful, and even you as an artist will be like, aha, yes, that is right. So you know, the other day I talked to you about this manuscript that I sent to a publisher, and they straight away gave me the criticism saying, well, you need to move the conflict to the very first page, because remember, this is a book for kids. So if you put it on the page 3, the child already lost their attention. So they were really good in giving me the criticism, or even like suggestions on how to improve it. And that type of criticism is always welcome, because you can actually use it to, it's useful, right? It's useful to improve your art. Whereas when it's a criticism that comes from a place of shame, or they're trying to shame you, generally it's going to have the undertone of like, how dare you, why did you even do this? And it's going to be generic. It's bad, yeah, but why? like, oh, it's boring. Yeah, but why? I think this is where it is really good to have a community of like artists and like-minded people. I find, for example, like my last book, the Million Lost Colors, that the manuscript that I wrote for that for the first time, I was doing a course. So it was like about, I don't know, 10 or 15 other writers that were trying to write a children's book as well. So one of the sessions included that we all, printed 10 manuscripts and then we all just gave it to each other and just marked it and gave suggestions and questions, or like, oh, this doesn't make much sense, or how are they going to get from here to here? I'm not very clear. And that actually was something that after I looked at those suggestions or at those questions, that made the manuscript a little bit better than if I hadn't done that piece of work. So I think it's really important to to find that community of people. And I think now, if you're an artist, you probably are an introvert, and it's not something that would come naturally to try to seek like-minded people. But even the other day I told you, like, I went to the NGV, and in the Impressionist exhibition that I went to, you could tell that all the artists at the time, they went to the same art school, they all hung out, they held their art exhibitions together, so they kind of like were able to draw upon each other's creative energy that was able to expand. And I think that's why they were a lot more successful than if they were just working alone. And I think that's a mistake I've made, because I like to work alone, but I feel like probably in my next chapter, whatever I end up doing, I will be very consciously and mindfully looking for that community. And then she has a bunch of tasks this week. I thought a few were really interesting. There were 2 about describing your childhood room and your current room, and what did you like in both of them. There's one about, this one was really interesting. There was one about looking at your habits and writing down what, and including your bad habits, right? So this is more about the habits that make you feel ashamed, and then what is the benefit that you're getting out of that habit. So for example, for me, scrolling social media and watching TV after work, that's like my habit, right? Like the one that is actually stopping me from producing more, from being more creative, because I'm taking my attention away from it. And I think the benefit is that I'll get that dopamine, right? That straight dopamine that I wouldn't otherwise have if I have to be 100% present. So if you're liking this content, don't forget that you can actually subscribe, and you can also share it with your creative friends. Make sure that if you're sharing this with your friends, that you guys are doing it together. And you can always buy The Artist's Way. You can always buy the book, and the link in the description. Remember, I get a small commission and no extra cost to you. So I'm about to go into my artist date to the Hellenic Museum. So Melbourne has a very big Greek community, and there is a museum which is in what used to be the old Mint here in Melbourne.
So how did my artist date go? Let's take a look. This artist date was really nice. I actually took my mom because she's visiting, so we went to the Hellenic Museum here in Melbourne. The exhibition explores ritual as a concept and how humans related to the gods through it. One part of the exhibition was photography. They also had newer art inspired in showing Greek costumes for different rituals and festivals. They also had a number of artifacts from different stages of Greek history. And there was one section that had the story of Pandora's box. And you could grab a gray piece of paper and write something bad, and you could throw it in a giant vase or like a pit, right? And they also had butterflies, symbolizing hope. And you could write something in a butterfly and stick it on the wall, kind of like to show a lot of like the good things and the good things that mean hope for people. They also had a section on the Olympics and the different events in ancient times, as well as a section to see the early stages of medicine. That time in history had a lot going on. Divination, medicine, sport, ritual, everything was merged in the daily lives of Greek people and their relationship to the divine. They even had an oracle to ask anything you want. It was a lot of fun. Overall, the exhibition made me reflect on our relationship with the divine and how it's influenced by the elements. It's also influenced by other cultures and by the time in history we live in. Also, it's influenced by the geography where we live. We all, in a way, have our own rituals, and they form an important part of who we are and how we make sense of the world. How about you? Do you have any rituals? If you have an interesting ritual, let me know in the comments. For example, before I start writing, I do a little meditation so I can bring creativity to me. And also I have my bedtime rituals that I need to know so my body realizes that it's time to sleep. Thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to like and subscribe and share. And if you have any questions or if you have any comments, let me know. See you soon.